Hello there and welcome to the Impact Zone podcast. We are back once again to talk more TNA wrestling shenanigans. And today we are discussing pulling your weight in a wrestling match. Well, I guess this is also relates to promos and whatnot as well, segments, etc. But realistically, like a lot of this really relates to what sort of happens in the ring, mostly, I would say, because one of the things that I think you've got to do to pull your weight, quote unquote, in a wrestling match is make it look believable, make it look real. If you're the babyface or if you're the heel, it doesn't really matter which side of this is on, I guess, but you've got to first make everything look believable. If somebody is in one of these wrestling matches and you've got a chin lock on somebody and you're just kind of laying there and you're whatever, and you're not really putting any real effort into it. Now there are some times that you can kind of be laying there and you can kind of make it look good, or you're just trying to keep somebody down or whatever. But that's the thing, it's like people can see through it when you're not putting in the effort into whatever move you're doing. I'm just using that chin lock or whatever it is because it's one of the most typical rest holds in the game, and it's pretty widely known, even among many non-fans. It's not the most exciting maneuver in the world, obviously, but when somebody, and this is when you hear people sort of sometimes complain about how fake things are, when the casual fan or even the non-fan is watching something, that's who you've got to apply this to. You've got to make them think, holy shit, this guy's, trying to break this guy's neck or something, You've got to make it look real. You can't make it look, or, not literally trying to break their neck perhaps, but they're trying to choke this person out, or they're trying to, weaken them in some way, or they're trying to hit the shit out of them. They're trying to punch the shit out of them. They're not just, I'm gonna, slightly maybe hit you, kind of. No, I'm fucking wailing right on you, and I'm gonna fucking fuck you up. Like these are some real looking punches, not just sort of, I've got some kid gloves on, and I'm just kind of fake punching you or whatever. It's got to look, everything you do has got to look real. Make it look real. Even your facial expressions or whatever. And this is something that I sort of got into when I was learning wrestling at a wrestling school. I was like, I'd tell people, I'm not gonna sell bullshit, basically. So this is one thing I think some people should pick up, is that if your opponent isn't carrying their weight, stop selling their bullshit, because people can see right through it, and it looks worse if you continue to sell something that isn't looking effective, or they're not doing the right thing to make it look as effective as possible. So at that point you need to start doing something to make it look like, right, well, I'm going to fight this because it's obviously not looking real enough. So if I'm not fighting against it, it looks even more fake. So I get that, again, there's that whole like, well, this is a suspension of disbelief type thing, but you've got to have that suspension of disbelief when somebody's not trying, when somebody's quote unquote not carrying their weight as far as being in the match is concerned. Then the whole thing falls down, and that illusion is broken very quickly, So again, you need to always be like thinking, is this looking real, to the fans, to the very, very casual fans, and to the non-fans. You need to make it look like this is a competitive wrestling thing. Yes, everyone sort of knows that it's fake. But that's the art of the craft, is trying to, for those 2 hours or whatever it is, and if your match is 5 minutes long or 10 minutes long or whatever it is, or even 30 minutes long or an hour long, it doesn't matter. As long as you're trying your best to make it all look real, you're doing the right thing. But again, you've got to, especially when it's a tag team match, you've got a lot more bodies to have to try to worry about, or 6-man tag or something like that, or whatever it is. The more people that are involved, the harder it sort of becomes sometimes to make sure everything's looking as real as possible. And sometimes if you are in a position that you can't see everything, then you need to be looking into the crowd. Are they going, oh man, this guy hasn't got that chin lock on very good, I don't believe it, and I don't believe this guy's in any peril, or whatever. Then you're starting to go, right, well, I've got to just get out of this as quickly as I can, because obviously the people aren't buying it. So it's time to move on and try to do something else, because the fans aren't buying it. You need to listen and look and see how the audience is reacting, because if they're not, and sometimes they won't react just because they have no investment, but that's the investment that you need to draw from them. You need to draw them back in and say, okay, they're not buying this because it doesn't look real, all right, we've got to do something else. The next thing is playing your role. This is one of those things. It doesn't matter if you are a babyface or whatever, or are a heel, same thing. You've got to perform your role. If you're the babyface, you've got to be doing the things to fire up the crowd, or at any time that you can do that, and get them invested into the match, get them invested into you. Same for the heel. They've got to try to invest the people into the struggle of the babyface, really. But again, they've got to feed for the babyface, and sometimes when it's that veteran, they think, and I understand they've been in this business a lot longer than what I have been and whatnot, but again, just knowing that, oh, man, yeah, this isn't working, maybe we should do something else, and I've got to come back stronger later on, or I've got to come back with something, or I've got to make whatever I'm doing really look good, or really, put that time and effort in there. I'm not just here just to, collect a check or whatever. I'm not just here to walk, punch, or whatever, which is infamous for a few wrestlers, sort of phoning it in per se. But you're not just there to phone it in as a character or as, that personification. So you've got to know your role. You're the dastardly heel, whatever it is. You've got to be working that all the time, right? I'm going to start choking him, or I'm going to start doing this, or I'm going to rake the eyes, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that, I'm going to, make a distraction, The babyface is coming back too early. Well, obviously, there's a reason why he's, trying to come back, or he's trying to do something. It's because he's trying to make that fight look more real. He's not just, going into business for himself, He's not just not listening. He's trying to read the crowd and trying to do the best as what he can to make the match real and make what's happening real. So, okay, well, I can't have him having this comeback. It's not the right time yet, or whatever. I don't think it's the right time yet, So I'll get a distraction, or I'll do something else, or I'll, rake the eyes, or, whatever. I'll give him a bit of a choke or something else, So you've got to be reading not only, the crowd, but you've got to be reading each other, That's a little thing that, sometimes is kind of missed. If I'm giving, my opponent some shots to the breadbasket, type thing, while he's got me in his headlock, I'm saying, hey, we need to do something. The crowd aren't into this. I'm not just saying, hey, dickhead, or whatever. I might be saying that to some extent, but hey, I'm not gonna follow your orders, or I'm not gonna follow your lead. I'm just saying, hey, I can sense that, this isn't working. We need to move this along, or we need to do something. And this is what I feel like we need to start doing. We need to move on, or you need to put your effort in there, buddy. It doesn't feel like you're putting in any effort to making this, work, because the crowd are dead, So let's, and obviously sometimes when you're in those rest holds, the crowd goes a bit dead sometimes, but, you get the crowd, starting chanting, for you, or for the babyface, at least. So that's one thing that you've got to be keeping your ears and eyes out for. Again, reading your opponent. Why are they doing that? And even sometimes when you're, you don't even usually have to say anything or whatever. You just do the thing, so you can sort of tell your opponent, hey, it's time to do this, or it's, I think it's time to do that, or, give me a shutdown, or do this, or, try to do something so that, people get more invested. You've always got to be trying for that, not just kind of sitting there and hoping for the best, but yeah, it's one of those tough things about wrestling. It's all about nuance and whatnot, and it's hard to get that nuance when you're a newer wrestler. But those are the things that, again, older wrestlers and whatnot, even wrestlers that have been in the business for a year, should be trying to impart to you, or teach you, or help you understand. Like, it's very much one of those things that you can sort of see it sometimes as a fan as well. And when you're a student of the game, which you sort of have to be as well, you see these things. You start going, I can see that this person, they just sort of lost energy there, or, whatever it is. They're breathing heavy, they're doing this now. They're trying to slow the match down because they can't keep up with this person, whatever it is. They legit can't keep up. That's not the story, they just legit can't keep up with this person, but they've made that into the match, which is pretty smart. They know that they can't keep up, so they're doing everything to just ground and pound their opponent. So again, knowing which way the crowd goes. Look at Rock v Hogan. The guys there, they might not have 1,000% known that people were going to, transition over to Hogan as the babyface. But when they got out there, they started to hear that reaction, and they started going, okay, we've got to change up what we were doing, why we were doing this, because people are going to cheer for Hogan, especially when, I think it was that first lockup or whatever it was. I think they changed a lot of what they were going to do, or how they were going to do it, or how they were going to approach it. And that's one of those masterful things that wrestlers have to do. You have to be able to anticipate at some point, wait a minute, like with Nick Nemeth versus Joe Hendry. If you're going into this match, everyone wants to cheer for Joe Hendry. So it's going to be a very uphill battle for you as the other babyface to get a good reaction at any point in this time, or get as big of a good reaction as what your opponent will get. So just knowing that is just half of the battle. Just knowing that, hey, well, they're not going to cheer me nearly as much as they're going to cheer this other guy, so I've got to work around that and try to make the match more about him, coming back. And this is something that, I saw in the Josh Alexander versus Nick Nemeth match, and a couple other matches that he had there, was that he was dominating a lot of these these matches against some of these other guys, and I think that was the wrong call there. But then again, like, it's funny that you go along and come to a match like this, and I think they made the right call of having him be more dominant, taking the role somewhat of more of a little bit of a heel, because they knew, hey, well, people are going to want to cheer for Joe, so that's the way the match needs to be, like, laid out. It needs to be laid out for him, you know, because that's what the people want. So there's no point in trying to fight what the people want. I've got to be in this match too, but, you know, I'm there to, you know, help him, you know, make him look like he belongs, and make the people believe, you know, for like a better term. But again, that's what everyone has to do when they find an opponent like that. When you're facing when you've got two heels working together, well, now one of you might have to start going, okay, well, am I going to get cheered by the audience? Or how can I get the audience to find some sympathy in me, or whatever else? I'm not a big of a heel as this person, or whatever. So, you know, can I get that going for me? You know, because otherwise there's not much to the match. There's no investment into the match, really, with two heels. Because it's like, well, who do I cheer for? I don't like either of these guys. So you've got to start doing things that, you know, either somewhat play to the crowd, or sort of piss the crowd off even more, so that you can, you know, get the heat on yourself, so that your opponent can then take that role. So again, just knowing this sort of thing, and knowing your role, and, you know, sort of understanding, like, or foreseeing, like, okay, I'm going to face this person at this time, what am I going to do? You know, like, because it's always one of those things. It's like you do, like, your classic stuff that you're sort of known for, obviously, but it's one of those things that you start going, well, when am I going to do this? When am I going to do that? Why am I going to do this at this time, etc.? Not just, you know, I'll slap it together. And, you know, you can do that where you're like, oh, I'm so confident that I can call it in the ring, or whatever else it is. But, you know, not knowing, you know, beforehand that you have some sort of game plan, or some sort of thought behind, like, where's my match going with this person or that person, or whatever else it is just like asking for trouble. Even if you have, like, a faint idea of a few things that you kind of want to do, well, you know, at least you've got a place to start with some of that sort of stuff. Like, in this next bit, like, sort of relates to that, laying out matches. You know, if you're not a person who you know, has a lot of experience in laying out matches, it can be really difficult. And you know, calling it in the ring or whatever else, that can be very difficult as well, because, like, if you're halfway across the ring or whatever it is from your opponent, and you know, you don't remember the last spot, you don't want to be like, oh man, what was the last spot? You know, and you don't want to be like, hey, what was the last spot? And him having to yell it out to you across the ring, because everyone's going to hear it, you know. And same with, like, asking the referee or whatever it is. Like, sometimes you can get away with, like, the referees coming in to check you or whatever else, and things like that. And then you say, hey, what's the next spot? And he's like, oh yeah, super kick, or whatever it is, you know, like. But you know, you've got to have a general idea. Again, you knowing your role, like, okay, I'm the babyface, he's the heel, you know. So, you know, what's a spot here that would, you know, that makes sense? You know, what just happened? Why did that just happen? Just thinking through things and saying, okay, I remember something, but I don't remember exactly what was happening. So just thinking through what you're trying to achieve, and what sort of has happened, and what the context kind of was before, you know, and having that match laid out somewhat will help. And same with, like, calling it in the ring. You know, if you have to do something to be like, and I don't remember the next spot, or whatever it is, you're like, well, I'll just wait for my opponent to do something, and he says, hey, you know, this wasn't the spot. And you say, oh, sorry, I forgot what we were doing, you know, and they come over and give you a clothesline in the corner or something, whatever else it is, or give you like a chin lock or something and say, okay, well, what are we going to do next, you know, all right, well, we were going to do this, so let's go back to doing that, but first I'll Irish whip you into the corner or something, whatever, you know, whatever it is. So just being able to be like, okay, I've forgotten the next spot, you know, that's on me, I've forgotten, it was complex, or wasn't that complex, but it's still, like, I just forgot because I got caught up in whatever I was doing. Same with, like, people kicking out. Sometimes you're like, oh yeah, I've got this next sequence in my head, right, I know what I'm doing, right, I have to kick out before 3, and then you hear 3 and you're like, oh shit, what? I was so distracted by figuring out what I was doing next, or whatever else it was, or whatnot, that I forgot to, you know, kick out, or whatever it was, at the right time. So now, I just blew all the spots that we were going to do, you know. Maybe it takes away time from, you know, the show or whatever else it is, and they're like, well, now what are we going to do, you know. But those mistakes happen. Like, this is the next sort of last little bit, I guess, is like, mistakes happen, botches happen, injuries happen. It's one of those things, and it is tough to sort of know exactly what to do sometimes when, you know, you've got your match happening or whatever, and somebody's injured. It's like, well, do we continue? You know, should we continue? Is there any point in doing that? You know, and what's, you know, maybe we should just like stop and just like, okay, this person, you know, they need to, you know, be taken out or whatever. Am I going to finish this match without them, you know, or am I more concerned with like their health or whatever at this moment? And I guess it does depend on the severity of the injury or what have you. So you've got to work with what is known or what the situation is, you know, and just getting clarity, you know, from your opponent is one of those big things. You've got to be checking your opponent. Are they all right? Are they okay? You know, and if you can't check that they're all right, they're okay, you need the referee to check, hey, are they all right? Are they okay? You know, like, and then you need to be saying, right, well, do they know the next spot? You know, because they, again, same thing with like before, like just checking, do they know the next spot? You know, and sometimes they don't, sometimes they do, or sometimes they've got them like dyslexia, reversed, backwards, whatever. Like, so it's always one of those things that you've got to be, you know, working with your opponent, or in their sense, at least your opponent, because in the end you're not really, well, you sort of are, but you're not really opponents, you know. You're just a pair of wrestlers that are trying to work together, you know, and make a match, you know, at the end of the day. So it's one of those things, you've always got to know your roles and what you're doing and why you're doing it. It's not just let's do some cool stuff or whatever. Yeah, of course, but you need to always take in mind the safety aspect, you know, first and foremost, obviously, you know, and then take into account, right, well, actually I've forgotten the fudge we are doing, or whatever it is, you know, like, what were we doing, you know, like, whatnot, or my opponent's just gone down, I don't know if they're, you know, hurt, or I don't know if my opponent actually knows what's happening, or whatever, so I've got to check on them. I can't check on them, I'll get the referee to check on them, all of that sort of stuff, you know, making sure that, you know, you can, or your opponent can continue to perform, yeah, just minimizes any issues that you will have going forward. You know, your ultimate role as a wrestler is to entertain the fans and be safe about doing it, you know. As I said, sort of injuries happen, but you know, if you're as safe as what you can be, you know, you will avoid, you know, many injuries or many more major injuries. You might be feeling a bit sore afterwards or whatever. You might need the spa or whatever else you want to do to, you know, make yourself, you know, relax your muscles or whatever else you need to do to recover and recuperate. But, you know, still you'll be able to wrestle tomorrow or in 10 minutes or, you know, whatever else you've got. Because again, that's what I mean by saying, you know, you might be having 3 matches today or 4 matches or 20 matches or whatever else it is. I don't know. Again, you know, it just depends on the bookings that you've taken. Or you might be like, oh, okay, cool. Same with like having your commitments. Like, what is my commitments? My commitments are, you know, I've got to go to the gym, I've got to eat right, I've got to, you know, exercise, I've got to, you know, have this match here, I've got this interview there, whatever else it is. You know, you've just got to know all the little things, and that's where sometimes having a personal manager or something that says, okay, don't forget you've got this, or don't forget you've got that, or I've lined this thing up for you, or whatever else it is. Because again, like, it's a lot of work to just sometimes do the wrestling, because again, as you say, like, you got to go to the gym and you got to eat right and you got to do all this sort of stuff to, you know, do that sort of thing. But yeah, like, just having those other things to be on your plate and being like, okay, I've got to call these people and I've got to, you know, do this interview, and I've got to go to this place to, you know, do this. All right, I've got to get my suit or whatever else it is together, and I've got to look good, and, you know, got to do my hair or whatever, you know, like all those little things that, you know, you fly under the radar sometimes and people forget, because you are a personality as well, and you've got to get your name out there. And you like look at Eric Young's Vinyl Obsession. Like, it's one of those shows. It's like, I haven't watched it, but again, that's a good idea, going and doing these other sorts of shows and whatnot that are out there, and starting to go, okay, cool, you know, I'm going to get my name out there doing this, or I'm going to be, you know, look at Xavier Woods doing his, I don't know whether it was on Twitch, but his streaming stuff that he'd do on YouTube, up, down, or whatever. You know, it's like, okay, I'm going to be doing this, you know. It's not just, oh, well, I'm going to sit in the back and I'm going to relax. Yeah, sure, I can sit in the back and relax and play video games or something, or whatever else it is. And that's another thing, getting enough sleep sometimes, because there's only so many hours in the day, and you only get so much free, like, space to actually do that. But again, like, you know, knowing how to unwind, not just, you know, physically, you know, get your muscles to relax or, you know, recover and recuperate, but like just getting your mind to be like in the right place. And it can be a mental game, very much so. You know, people's mental health is a big factor in some of this sometimes, and it can be, you know, something that's, you know, you need to keep in check with your you know, whoever you're working with, being like, man, I'm not, you know, I'm not in the right space right now to do this or whatever. But yeah, you've got to know, you know, yourself, okay, I've got a job to do at the end of the day, in a sense, or whatever. You know, just taking responsibility too. Like, there's a lot that you need to realize, and just, again, like, especially if you're international or even national, you're going to be away from home a lot. If you've got dogs or cats or whatever, you've got to have somebody who will take care of them. If, you know, you've got family members, you're going to be missing your family. And there's times that you say, no, I'm just going to, you know, go home because it's Thanksgiving or whatever, it's Christmas time, you know, that's it, I'm going home because it's that time, and, you know, I've fulfilled a lot of dates, and I might get some money, or I might get some more exposure doing this or whatever else it is. But at the end of the day, I've been doing this for, you know, the whole year, and it's time to have 1 or 2 days off and see my family and celebrate, Christmas, Thanksgiving, whatever else it is that you're celebrating, because you only get maybe 1 or 2 days off a year or whatever it is. Because then again, like some wrestlers, as you say, have got to have, quote unquote, that other real job, to sort of support what they're doing, and some don't. But again, like, what other things, commitments, not just things, I'll do this or do that or whatever, I've got to mow the lawn, those little things again, I've got to do the laundry, all those little things, got to do the dishes, all that stuff, it all adds up. And you've got to be able to take care of that stuff, or you've got to have somebody to take care of that stuff, again. So, and again, that all comes out of your money that you've got, and that you're earning, so again, same thing, you've got to be earning enough to get by with all these things going on and whatnot. So it's very, very tough at times, but again, just knowing, okay, we need to slow down, and we need to, maybe I need to take some more time, doing this for myself, because I can't really afford to get somebody else in here, so I maybe need to take less dates or less, things. But then again, it's like, well, how much better off would I be if I took, another, instead of maybe taking another match or whatever, maybe taking a, quick interview or something else. It depends. How much is it all going to pay me? And again, you've got to worry about your merchandise and that sort of thing as well. So it's not an easy game at all, in any capacity. You can be trying to get flights, and your flight could be delayed or whatever it is. So now you've got to sit there for an hour or whatever it is, or 2 hours, or even more. Who knows? So there's a lot to wrestling. There's all the regular life elements as well that you've got to take care of, paying your bills, paying your rent, etc. No matter how frugal you want to be, you've got to be finding that money that you need for the things that you need, because nothing's free, really. Even when they say it is, it's like, oh yes, but it costs something else. So you doing your dishes or you doing your laundry, somewhat might be free, but it costs you your time or whatever, and that is another cost that you've got to keep your eye on as well, because again, as I've said several times, you've only got so many minutes, so many hours, whatever, in a day, and so it can be a struggle to get those things done sometimes, or get them done in the time at which you have, when you have your downtime or whatever else it is. But guys, I think we've pretty much covered all of that sort of stuff, and you can get a good idea of a lot of the sort of hoops and hurdles that kind of can go into that other stuff of wrestling, and like, because it's not just wrestling, as we would all know, but again, I think that some people really, even some of the wrestlers don't really consider, how am I going to manage my time, how am I going to manage my money, etc. So it can be a an effort fraught with different issues. But anyway, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this one, and I hope you guys will join me again in another one.